And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Davenport Coaches Show, live from Uccello's in Caledonia, our first show of the season. We're going to change things up, how we've done things previously, and not only focus on a couple of sports, but we're going to try to get the entire athletic department. We welcome you here. We'll be here on Tuesday nights. We'll have a couple of special guests each night. That's the goal, at least. And we welcome you to our opening show. We want to, first of all, thank our wonderful host, Uccello's of Caledonia. They do a great job supporting Davenport athletics throughout the season in so many ways, and they also open up their place for us to do our shows from, and we thank the good folks here, and thank you so much for having us here, Uccello's. Tonight in our opening show, we've got a couple of very good guests. Director of Athletics, Paul Lowden, will join us in the first segment, and then head football coach Sparky Mcewen will join us in part number 2. We welcome Paul right now to it, and it's a little crazy time. We'll give you a little background. If you're not familiar with Paul, he's the only athletic director in the history of the athletic program at Davenport. Paul, you started back when the school was still downtown, before the new campus.
Yeah, I started in 2001, and to give a little bit of a history, Davenport University had athletics back in the 60s and 70s, and they stopped athletics in 80 or 81, and it took essentially a 20-year hiatus. And then I was hired to build the program from scratch. So I was hired in 2001. We started competing with 2 sports in 2002, and that was women's basketball and men's hockey.
Now, most of the time in the 60s and 70s, it was a 2-year school, right? When did the 4-year school jump?
When I joined, it was we offered both associate degrees and bachelor's degrees, and so it was a 2- and 4-year.
Now, again, you were coaching, of course, very successful coach. Won titles there at Davenport and athletic directors, but you were on the ground floor planning for the new campus from the athletic standpoint.
Yes.
Go back there and tell us a little bit about what was involved in the plans and what it felt like to get things finally going.
Well, it's when you start from scratch and I didn't come from athletic administration background, so you're kind of going in blindsided a little bit, but that probably was a good thing. So I didn't feel like there was any obstacles. We had great support from the university. When I was hired, my responsibility was to recruit the first hockey team, which is the men's D2 team at that time, and then we hired a coach to coach the women's basketball team. And we grew very slowly in the first couple years. We added a golf team. We added a soccer team. We added men's basketball. Then we added women's basketball. And then when it hit, we moved over to the new campus and where we are currently now in 2005. And then we grew very fast after that time. From about 2006 or 7 through 2012, we probably added close to 15 sports.
Now, the Student Center was one of the first things built, correct?
Well, yeah, it wasn't there in the beginning. It was, we started with the administration building, and we had our offices for the few programs we did have in a classroom, and they had the one resident hall, and they built the second. Then after that, they did build the Student Center. We opened the Student Center in fall of 2008.
Now, longtime followers of Davenport know that this would be the case, but a lot of folks do not realize, you mentioned it, since the Student Center was built later, your teams had to compete sometimes at high schools and even a couple middle schools originally, right?
Yes, we did. We did compete at
the Caledonia Middle?
Caledonia, the middle school, Duncan Lake Middle School. That was our home for basketball. We did use one of the Christian schools' soccer field, South Christian. The soccer field. Those were the main programs that we started. We've always continued to use. We started with Kentwood Ice Arena, then we moved to Patterson for hockey.
And now you look at the growth with the Student Center, and then the fabulous Farmers Insurance Athletic Complex with the tennis and the softball and the baseball, the football, and that has to be a special source of pride for you individually.
Yeah, I mean. I haven't really had a lot of time to look back and really enjoy all the steps that we went through because we've been in continual growth for so many years. I mean, currently we sit with our NCAA Division II programs plus our non-varsity and all of our fan engagement programs. We sit at 40 athletic programs and over 900 athletes. So we started with 22 athletes in 2002. So, we've grown exponentially.
All right, we've talked about the growth, Paul. Now we have to talk about the pause, because let's go back to last March. Everything's shut down. Let's first talk about the spring sports, what it was like for you as the director. Tell us about the interaction, first of all, with the spring sport coaches and the athletes when it was when you realized that their seasons were coming to an end.
Yeah, it was a tough situation. I mean, it was obviously there's a lot of information that you're gathering going around the country, and programs were shutting down from from state to state, and it was a scary situation. Nobody knew what to expect. We shut down our programs on March 18th or 19th is when we officially shut down all athletics for the remainder of the season. We had most of our spring sports had already started the season, but they and unfortunately they didn't get a chance to finish. And for those that were seniors, my heart goes out to those that are seniors that chose not to come back. They did have the option to come back, but didn't come back because they're finishing up their degree, that didn't get an opportunity to play in the spring. My heart goes out to them. They've been great student athletes, ambassadors for Davenport, and it was devastating in that aspect, and it continues. I mean, it continues all the way through. Nobody knew at that time that 6 months, 7 months, 8 months later, we're still in the midst of it.
Yeah, and Paul, you mentioned that. Now, from an athletic eligibility standpoint, they did have the option to come back this year, right?
Yes.
But again, most of them, as you said, were seniors academically, and they're ready to go on to the next phase of their life.
Yeah. Exactly.
What was, when you talked to the athletes, because I know that you did, you had interaction not just with your coaches, but with the athletes. What were their concerns? What were you hearing from them?
Well, they were, it's all was new to them as well. I mean, what we did is we said that nothing changes in regards to, our commitment to you from a financial standpoint, honored your scholarships, and we continue to do that. Those who came back this year, that decided to take an extra year, we just felt it was, we wanted to make the best out of what the situation was, and you do the best you can, and we're all, day by day we're dealing with this, and it has its challenges, but we're all in it together, is what I'd say. Our coaches, our student athletes, we're all in this together.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the academic part for your athletes now. With an online setup, they're taking classes remotely. How do you monitor things, and what are the challenges there in terms of the athletes staying on top of their work?
Yeah, athletes themselves are typically a self-motivated people, and so it's now taking that self-motivation and putting it into your schoolwork. Now, this year at Davenport, we have what you would call hybrid classes. We have in-seat and virtual, where they would watch it online at the time in which their class is. If it was 10 o'clock in the morning, they could either watch online or they could sit in seat, and they split it up. If you had a Monday, Wednesday class, Mondays, half the class would be virtual and the other half would be in seat. So you could have the social distancing. So
did the students have a choice at all, or it was assigned?
They had a choice to being all virtual, a choice to be they could do the hybrid, or they could just do online themselves.
Okay.
So they had that option. There are some programs that you need to be in seat to do it, like labs from nursing and things like that. So there are some programs that do have to have a component of the academic piece that is in seat. Now,
with the fall, as you said, we're still in the midst of the shutdown of athletics from a GLIAC standpoint. The GLIAC said when they shut down fall sports, we're going to talk with Sparky Mcewen about the football. They said that they left open the possibility of play later in the school year, meaning in the spring. Where does that stand right now?
Sure.
And what are the options?
Now, what we had as a vote from our Council of Presidents, which was submitted to them from all of us ADs, was to re-engage and start athletics back up January 1 or later. So that is what has been approved right now from the GLIAC, from our Council of Presidents. Expectation is we're finishing up schedules, and you're looking at starting basketball starting on the 7th of January. Right now, as of what just information I have as of today, and all of our other winter sports, our swimming and diving program, our
Hockey.
wrestling program.
Yeah.
Hockey the same way. It doesn't part of the GLIAC. That's
a separate league. You're right.
Separate issue. But they're all going to be. All of our winter sports are starting after January 1st.
Are you looking at mostly a conference-only schedule?
For basketball, it's conference only. Swimming and diving, you really can't because you're going to meets. So what they're going to have is probably smaller number of schools in those meets. It might be just a few schools instead of having multitude of schools. Like wrestling, we're going to be doing more duels than we will do 10 schools or 15 schools showing up at one location. But we do have our spring sports starting up early. We got our women's volleyball is looking to start in early February to pick up their season. It will be a shortened season, 18 to 20 games. We have our soccer programs. We're looking at schedules now that they're looking at a 7-game schedule only, and starting that sometime in first week in March and going through to the end of April, playing 1 game a week. So and then you got your traditional spring sports that will be starting up as well. So
all right, we got to ask you about the possibilities of spring football because that was one of the options they threw out there.
It is something we would like to do. There may be some schools out there that may choose not to, but for us from Davenport University, we'd like to get a few games in.
But from a GLIAC standpoint, is that an all or none thing, or is it partial you could get a half and half?
You could. I don't think we're going to get all. I mean, we haven't made final determination. I think it's going to be a kind of a split decision. There'll be some of the schools that would like to compete and play a few games in, whether that's scrimmages or whether that's a full competition. We'd like to get in up to 4. I'm not sure if we can get 4 or not. We'd like to get that. It would be a great experience for the student athletes. What a great experience we're a young team. What a great opportunity for the young players to get out and compete and get themselves prepared for a real quick turnaround in fall of 21.
In a year of hybrids, it's almost like a hybrid of a regular spring practice and a season, right? It's kind of a hybrid in between.
It'll be a hybrid, and there is no fall championships. That was canceled, so therefore they're not playing for anything NCAA.
Right.
So we want to give them an opportunity to play. Now, all sports outside of football, like our volleyballs and our soccers, they will play a conference tournament at the end. So they will play for something.
All right. Back one other football question before we get Sparky on here. When would that be calendar-wise? When you'd hope to have practices start for football, and when they might be able to play games if they have oppositions?
Yeah, we're looking that they would they would start their practices in mid-February to late February, maybe early March, depending on the start date of the game. If we're looking at a start date of say the 27th of March. We'd count backwards and make sure they have 2 or 3 or 4 weeks to be able to do full practices. So
and when you say that, I can't help but think of our good friends up in Houghton and Michigan Tech.
And those are the situations because in talking with their AD, they're in us doing a shortened football schedule. They're saying we could have snow through mid-April or end of April, so that's why they don't have a lot of spring sports. So, that's why it's going to be challenging, compared to schools that are like us or south of us that potentially have the opportunity to get some opportunity to play.
At least in Marquette at Northern, they do have an indoor facility.
They can, yeah. So maybe,
they borrow that?
Maybe they will with Michigan Tech. Maybe they'll play out of Northern Michigan's dome. So
why not?
Who knows? That would be a good opportunity for their student athletes.
Well, Paul, it's been great visiting with you. We'll have you again on later in the show. And I guess one other thing I'd ask you to tell the Panther fans out there who are itching to come out and cheer on their teams, whatever sport it is, that it will happen sometime down the road, right?
Yeah, sports will be coming back. We want all of our fans to know that. We are going to just keep visiting our website at dupanthers.com, and we'll have updated information. But we're excited that we're preparing and being ready to start in January, and God willing, we're going to get there.
All right, Director of Athletics Paul Lowden at Davenport University. We'll take a short break, and then head football coach Sparky Mcewen will join us. So stay with us here on the Davenport Coaches Show, live from Uccello's in Caledonia.
Champions know how to seize opportunities. When they see moments of greatness unfold right before their eyes, they push as hard as they possibly can, and then they push harder. Because the heart of a champion never settles, never quits, and never stops giving its all. We are champions. We are Division II. We go big, we give it everything we've got, and we win. On the field, on our campuses, in our communities, for our causes, in our careers. We rise to become champions in everything we do. We are Division II, and there are no limits here. We make our time count. We set our own path. We become champions on our terms. It's time to up your game, because we're here to play and learn. But most importantly, we're here to discover ourselves, our vision, our heart, our drive, to achieve every goal we aim for, because we want to be champions at the highest level, life. At Division II, the opportunities are here. Are you ready?
All right.
Nothing.
There you go. Now you got it. In Caledonia, I'm Rick Berkey saying thanks for joining us here Tuesday night. We'll try to bring you a couple special guests each time. Enjoyed visiting with Director of Athletics Paul Lowden in the first half of the show. And don't forget, you can go to dupanthers.com and watch the shows anytime. So if you miss a show 1 week, you can always go back and catch it online. Go to dupanthers.com and you'll be able to find it. Head football coach Sparky Mcewen joins us right now at a time, Spark, it's a time you know better than me, but I just can't help but think. I made a point not to drive by the stadium and the fantastic Farmers Insurance Athletic Complex, because your team should be out there practicing and playing, and they're not. Tell us what the status of your team is right now, what you're doing, and your contact with them now.
Well, actually, we are practicing and playing against each other.
Okay.
So we are practicing, but we're not officially playing games on the weekend. As we all know, and it's tough. It's tough on our guys, but at the same time, this year, going into this year, our hashtag's been strictly business, and that's the way we go about business, okay? We focus on the things that we can control, and our boys have been doing a tremendous job, of that, and we'll get into some of those things in regards to protocols and things like that. So I couldn't tell you, I couldn't be prouder of my guys, given the moment and what's going on today.
It's kind of reminiscent. It was before your time, but Coach Esposito, who started the program here, when this first year they did nothing but practice, no games, and it's similar to that in a way. What's your? Because we talked with Coach Espo about that back then. What is the state of the mind of the guys? Because that they want to get out and compete, because that's what it's all about. What are they thinking right now?
Well, it's just that when you just said state of the mind. A lot of individuals don't think about mental health. Mental health with the whole COVID-19 thing is very important to me because these kids have been used to competing their entire lives. Nothing like this has ever happened, to interrupt a season like this for these young men, nor has it happened, to coaches. So mental health is some of the things that, and one of the causes that I've always talked about. And right now I worry about that a lot. I worry about that a lot. We went 5 or 6 months, where these kids were home and not able to go and work and do things. So getting them back, I was so excited about that and making sure that mentally we were going to be fine and getting around their teammates and their coaches and things like that. So that's been our number one thing that we've talked about as a staff. Is I always talk about taking advantage of opportunities, okay? When you have an opportunity to get better, mentally, physically, we're going to do just that. We're going to take advantage of that, and mental health is what I've talked to my staff about, making sure our guys are just in a good place.
All right, you mentioned that you are practicing now. What are the limitations? What can you do and can't you do, and for how long as far as practicing?
Well, we picked up where we left off March 16th or 17th, I think it was. That's when we last left off in the spring. We got the guys back here. We got them back early, actually. We got our guys back here early, and it was voluntary workouts. We kind of use it as a way of having like an abbreviated mini camp, for our guys that wanted to take part in that. They did a tremendous job. And then school started. The rest of the student body came back in, and, it was good seeing the rest of the students and the other athletes. And that's when we began to get more into the carer hours, where you can only be with the athletes 8 hours a week. with lifting and doing some player developmental things. And so we got into that. And now we've gotten into October 1. We started our first day of practice, and it's what we call fall practice, but it's actually simulated spring practice. And now all those young guys that came in, happy to see these kids. We get to work with them. And then we get to work with the guys from last year in our player developmental program. So getting them back, it's been very pleasing. We've been really good with injuries, knock on wood, and we've got one more week to go before we conclude the fall practices.
All right, I talked with Paul about the possibilities of the spring practice and some competition in the spring. He said that, the GLIAC is not right now united in focus as far as everybody being on the same page, and for different reasons. Some of it geographic. We talked about, the folks up in Michigan Tech, in the spring, they may have 3 feet of snow up there. But what are your thoughts and what are your hopes for spring competition?
Well, to be honest with you, that's above my pay grade. I'll let the leadership, handle that, the ADs and the presidents. Right now, man, I'm so focused on my boys, and I'm dead serious about the mental health of my guys, because this is something that it's unprecedented, something that these young people have never dealt with. I got to make sure my guys can control what they can control, and that's their academics, and that's their physical health and their mental health here at Davenport. In regards to the GLIAC, they're going to get it together. I'm pretty sure that they're going to do what's right for, the boys, because there's a lot that goes into it. You got testing, that every university's got to comply with and be on the same page. And in order for us to be successful, with our university and our brethren over there, whether it be one of the schools, right up the road, everyone's got to agree to testing and different things like that. So they've been talking about it for some time, and I'm pretty sure they're going to come to an agreement, and we'll figure out what we're going to do in the spring. I can tell you this much. Davenport wants to play football. Okay, our AD and our president has been extremely clear about our stance and what we want to do. So in the spring, we look forward to playing, and I'll just leave it up to them to make sure they cross T's and dot I's.
Sparky, you mentioned the academic side. We talked with Paul about the different options, some going all virtual, some going a hybrid, some going in class. From an academic standpoint, because you're very tied in, your staff is to your students' academic achievement, is this harder now without playing games, easier or the same as far as keeping the guys on task academically?
Well, that goes back to the mental health thing. We got to make sure we're on our game as a staff, making sure that, we're working with our kids, we're reaching out to all the resources that we have there at Davenport, because that's a challenge in itself. Because you can't run study tables the way you once ran study tables, okay? You can't do that because of all the different protocols, the social distancing, the masking, things like that.
So that makes it tougher, right?
Oh, it makes it extremely tough, So, I've always been very transparent with you. I'm worried about those things because we've never experienced this. And our kids, we talk about these challenges that we have in front of us. And so I tell these guys, you have to refer back and draw on the fact that we went into this season strictly business. So whatever you've got to do to make sure you get your academics taken care of, you do it. Whatever it's going to take, I want you to get it done. If you need to reach out to instructors, if you need to reach out to, different, people there that we have as resources for Davenport, you got to do it, because this is something that's different, and there's not a lot of face-to-face, contact going on, with these individuals and their instructors. A lot of it's virtual right now.
So let's kind of reflect back from last season, and when you do get a chance to compete, adjustments. You talked about adjusting as far as the present, but about the future as far as a football program. What's the next step? Because you've talked many times about taking that next step. What is that next step, and how do you get there?
Well, for us, we've talked about this, and with the NCAA, they've got these rules that they're playing with now. I'm going to return this entire football team that was going to play, this season, this fall. So I get, let's just use DeAndre Ford.
Okay.
DeAndre Ford in 2021 is supposed to be gone, maybe working, getting married, or things. He's going to be back for football. So right now, DeAndre Ford is actually getting more practice now with me than he's had in his entire athletic career when he's at Kansas and when he was at DU, because he's been hampered with injuries. So we have a number of DeAndre Fords on our roster. We have young guys that came in, our freshmen. These guys are getting live bullets right now in practice, where before, it's tough for a freshman to get a look. because Rick, once those kids come in August to camp, we're getting ready for our game because we only have 4 weeks to prepare for game 1. So now we get a free preview of what's to come. And so that's why we're so excited about playing in the spring and getting these guys some ability to get out there and to give us a look as a staff to evaluate them. So when these guys come back in 21, we know exactly what we're going to be dealing with.
What has the current situation, Sparky, how has it changed recruiting? What are you doing differently that you would not be normally doing in a normal situation?
Everything. Okay. Everything. My life's changed. My life's upside down. I'm telling you right now, like I told you, it's a challenge. Recruiting's changed. I've only been out to a couple high school football games because early you weren't allowed to go to games.
You weren't allowed to, yeah.
Yeah, so it's all different now, and now, we've had to reach out to kids social media-wise. Now, we had been already doing that, but we had to raise our game to a next level in regards to that. But with that being said, there's a lot of talented football players out there, Rick, that I think that are Division I kids that's going to filter down to Division II, okay? But with the new policies and laws in place, or rules in place, rather, in regards to scholarships, those kids coming back the next year, a lot of those scholarship budgets have been fulfilled. Those kids return. Okay, so I'll probably only lose a couple kids like the Dion Powers. Dion Powers was coming back to play. Here's an all-conference kid, but he's graduated, and he's like, okay, I'm kind of done with all this. He's walking away from football. Okay, so now all of a sudden that frees up scholarship, but those other dollars, all those kids return. So, when it comes to your budget throughout, whether it's the GLIAC or the not the MIAA, whether it's the GLIAC or the MIAA, where Southwest Missouri plays, those schools all have scholarships there that they're tied into athletes that are currently on their rosters. So those budgets, you're going to see Division IIIs get some really talented kids this coming year.
I'm going to backtrack a little bit. We were talking a little bit about the prospects of playing some games in this spring. Mm-hmm. At all levels of football, 1, 2, 3, there were some concerns by some coaches that by playing in the spring, you're going to have injuries which are going to not be healed by the fall, and that it could become, a real risk to have your players competing in the spring. And some coaches are saying, I'd rather we didn't compete because we want a full staff or a full squad going into the fall. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's a lot of truth to that, but anytime you line up in this game, this is a collision sport. You run the risk of injury anytime you line up. We know this, Rick. But at the same time, the thing that was talked about early, with this deal was that if you had a full complement of 10 or 11 or 12 ball games, okay, how do you recover from a full slate of games and then come back in August and you're prepared to roll? Yeah, you're going to run into some situations where you're going to have some significant injuries, and it's going to be tough to come back. But for the most part, those young people are going to bounce back. Now, when it comes to us, we've kind of talked as a leadership group. We're looking to play, if we're going to play, a limited amount of games that we can potentially host, at Farmers, depending on where we are with the governor's orders, so we can get my young guys some of that quality evaluation that they need, okay? Because 2021 is going to be a big year for us.
So in those spring situations, would this be kind of a testing ground where you might play some younger players more than you would in the fall because, it's a different situation, and you want to see them on a live game situation that you wouldn't maybe take a chance from in the fall?
Absolutely. And you got to remember now, it's a free opportunity to get an evaluation, with live bullets, because here's the deal. DeAndre Ford is going to be graduating. Okay, I've got 3 kids behind him that are pretty good. I've got 3 guys, that can play, but I need to see those guys on the field. I've seen Blake, playing some limited actions 2 years ago.
Okay? He's recovering from his hand injury. He's totally
he's back.
Healthy. Okay.
He's back. I got Jake Jensen and I got Isaac Van Dyke. These kids were all solid kids coming out of high school that we recruited that we're extremely excited about. So we need to get these guys some action. Okay, so just to kind of give you an example, we roll into a scheduled game this spring. You could see my number ones go for a half, and then you can see my other guys go for the second half.
Regardless of what the score is.
Oh, regardless. Our guys know we're going to play to win regardless. I don't care who's in the game. You know, I coach kids to win no matter what level they're in, but these guys know we're going to evaluate them. We're going to give them an opportunity to showcase their talent.
All right, Sparky, whenever we do play, one final comment, I want you to tell the Panther fans the kind of team that you will look for. Again, let's say in the fall, you know, what kind of team are you going to put out there on the field?
Well, this will be our best group, you know, talent-wise. And one of the things I've talked to my guys about is, you know, discipline. You know, I want to play smart. We're bigger. You know, we're a large football team right now. We've got some experienced guys coming back. One of the things that we're excited about is the staff. Kids that we have recruited are now juniors, okay? If you take a look, our defensive MVP last year, you know, here's a guy that we recruited. So now all of a sudden you got kids at receiver. You got kids at running back, you know. That's been looking great. You know, kids that we recruited when we got here. So we're excited for those guys. And obviously, you know, we've got a host of transfers in here, guys that that's just only going to raise the level of play for us. So talented team coming back. We're excited about it.
All right, and we look forward. We'll have Sparky on the coaches show here again from Davenport a little bit later on, so get closer on it. And that'll wrap up our opening show of the Davenport Coaches Show from Uccello's in Caledonia. So our first guest for Paul Lowden, our Director of Athletics, and for Sparky Mcewen, I'm Rick Berkey saying thanks for joining us. We'll be back here next Tuesday, and go Panthers.